The Chinese Revolution. The gap from an emperor chosen by the heavens to a communist regime. Most people have this huge hole in their timeline of China, and it's not only important to know about these 40 years, but it's also key to understanding one of the most powerful countries in the world. So first we must think, what is the Chinese Revolution? Is it a war? Is it a protest? Or is it just a big truckload of chaos? Well, really it's all three. It's a very messy and strange shift that can be traced back to 1910. So if we want to understand 1910, let's go back into the past. China was a kingdom, a really big kingdom, with an all-powerful king called the emperor. Now the emperor was thought to be chosen by the heavens, so everyone thought that their dead friends, their dead family, would go to the heavens. And in the heavens they would become wise, and they would elect the emperor from the heavens. This system was called the Mandate of Heaven, and if anyone questioned the emperor, they would be put to death, because it was like saying that your grandparents and your ancestors and all of the religion was wrong. So China had this system for hundreds of years, thousands of years even, with the emperors passing down their title of emperor through their family. Sometimes the families changed, but most of the time they were all just emperors. Now China also had a huge population in 1910. The population was 442 million Chinese. So not only is it an insane number to control all that people, but most people didn't even speak Chinese. A lot of people were Turks, some were Mongols, some were Tibetans, some lived in the south, some lived in the north. In the north they didn't understand anything. So it was like piling all of Europe into one country. So definitely people weren't happy. Most of the population didn't even understand the emperor. The other third or so were just farmers. And the worst thing was the government was super rich, and they didn't really share their wealth. And to finish things off, the emperor in 1910 was only 6 years old. And remember, nobody could deny his rule. So 1911 China seems like a wonderful place. A 6-year-old child is the ruler of China. That have just lost many wars against Europe and Japan. Most people away from the coast aren't even Chinese, and nobody understands each other. And nobody, no matter who you are, is allowed to do anything about it. So somebody was going to have to remove the emperor and his system, because it just wasn't working, with or without force. And that man was Sun Yat-sen. Now, who was Sun Yat-sen? Sun Yat-sen was a Chinese philosopher and politician that studied in the US and stated that his ideas. He believed in a republic, kind of like the US in China. So he and thousands of others of his followers founded the Chinese League. Now the plan was very simple. Get the people to defeat the emperor and make a republic. And in 1911 they executed the plan, and they won. They kicked out the kid and established the Republic of China. Sun Yat-sen was the first president, and everything was going super well until Sun Yat-sen decided to give power to his friend. Now, that seems fine, right? Trusting a really rich and corrupt person is just not okay, though, even if he is your friend. So he wanted to reinstall the monarchy. His friend wanted to reinstall the monarchy and erase everything in 1916. Fortunately, he died a few weeks later. But, unfortunately, because of the change and everything, and from his death, there was a massive drop in stability, and the country entered a huge crisis. Sun Yat-sen and his buddies of his political party, called the Kuomintang, or KMT for short, ran away to the south of China. And then, from all the instability, China went from this to this. Now, that's just a bunch of chaos and destruction, and it makes me want to cry. So, generals from the army and other powerful people started to make their own little countries and little forces and control certain regions of China. Some countries just straight up declared independence. Tibet and Mongolia were the most successful new countries, while generals also made their own countries, called cliques. The Fentian clique in the north fell to Japan, while some other clique, like the Ma clique, was supposed to be a Muslim country for Muslims in the west. A lot of other cliques appeared, but I don't have time to explain all of them. Now, the KMT with Sun Yat-sen ran away to the south. So Sun Yat-sen started to make his new KMT, and he had plans to retake China and to rebuild the republic and take away all this land from the generals and independent countries. He wanted to rebuild China. But unfortunately, he died of the Spanish flu in 1925. Now, his legacy was important, but probably the most important thing he did during that time was a deal. So this was the deal. Basically, the Russians would send weapons to the KMT, right? Because the KMT wanted to rebuild China, and to do that, he needed to take out the generals. So he told Russia, hey, you can give me some guns. And in return, the KMT would have to ally the communists. And if you have any background about China, you can tell that this would be problematic in the future. After Sun Yat-sen's death, the KMT was succeeded by an anti-communist called Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang Kai-shek was also a general, like others in the region, but he was different. He also believed in the republic, and so he became the leader of the KMT. Now, Shek was a strong anti-communist, but he was okay with getting weapons from Russia, so he stayed with the deal. With the good guns and organization from his good military mind, Shek took over all of the Chinese coast, from Beijing to the south, which was great for the KMT. But the problem was that in 1926, Shek's troops burned down the embassy of many nations, including the US. So the US and other countries got really angry. So Shek, like any responsible and honest man, blamed it on the communists, of course. And so the Chinese Civil War would officially begin, with the communists running away to the mountains and making a young farmer, Mao, their leader. While the Civil War destroyed the KMT, the years passed, and Japan began to look hungrily at the divided country. Not only was the KMT weak and fighting communists, but many of the generals still had their own authority. So Japan saw it as a dying cow. And, they were the vulture. In 1937, Japan invaded China, forcing Mao and Shek to ally or be destroyed by the Japanese. Even though Mao and Shek were strong enemies, they saw it as a really important thing to ally, or, they would all die. So, it was kind of important. Soon enough, China continued to fight against Japan during World War II. And in 1945, China and the US beat Japan, and everything was peaceful, and Mao and Shek made a huge deal, and everything was peaceful. No, that didn't happen. Mao and Shek resumed the Civil War, and they kept fighting for a few years. But the problem was, the KMT no longer had help from the Russians, because the Russians were supporting Mao. And after years of fighting, death, struggle, revolution, and backstabs, on October 1st, 1949, Mao officially won the Civil War and declared the People's Republic of China, a new communist China, and defeated the KMT. The KMT didn't have any help, so they got lost, and they ran away to a small island near China called Taiwan. Oof, it's a lot. Yeah, I know, it is a lot to process. So transition was empire, with a 6-year-old and, thousands of years. Republic with Sun Yat-sen, and building of the KMT. Warlords and generals because of the instability. Then the Civil War against the communists. Then World War II against the Japanese. Then unpausing the Civil War and fighting once again. And finally, communist victory leading to a communist dictatorship. So it is very complicated, but really, it changed everything in Chinese life. With the empire, everyone had to be in the role in society. If not, then people in the heavens would get angry and it was terrible. So everyone kind of belonged to a place in life. It was the way it was. If you said no, you had left society and you deserved to die. In the Republic, with Sun Yat-sen and his revolution, everything changed. People could now change jobs, people could vote, leave the country, and most importantly, society was now built on each individual, not on the emperor or his mandate of heaven. After the instability and the generals' period, Civil War, World War II, and many other conflicts, 42 million Chinese died. This time was filled with horror, chaos, and destruction. People would walk out of their villages and burn the other village, or wars would erupt between cliques, and the Civil War meant millions of farmers and common people dying to each other just for a political idea. Now, I'm not even including the 30 million Chinese that died just because of the communists, but life in China after the revolution was very bad. People would die, and The Japanese destroyed a lot, and so did the Chinese. It was terrible, full of change, destruction, and suffering. And although a lot of different radical changes were brought by the communists later on from an empire to a dictatorship, but I would still rate life in revolutionary China a 2 out of 10. So the Chinese Revolution is probably the most important development in Chinese history, and maybe even Asian history. Ending 2,000 years of an empire, fighting 3 big wars, and finally the establishment of the communist China we know and love today just come and shows how much 40 years of the 20th century has done to this nation.